हेलो एवरीवन। आई होप आप सब बहुत अच्छे से हैं और खैरियत से हैं। आप लोग सब धीरे धीरे ज्वाइन करेंगे, सो वील वेट फॉर 5-6 minutes before we really bring on our guests. So thank you so much for joining us for today's session of Zaiqa Chronicles. हम इस वर्चुअल मंच के ज़रिए से हिस्ट्री और कल्चर के कुछ पहलुओं पे चर्चा करते हैं, खानों के ज़रिए से, खानों फ्रॉम द साइट ऑफ फूड। मेरा नाम आली है। आई एम एन असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर इन दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी। आई टीच एट अंडरग्रेड लेवल। और इसके अलावा आई रन अ फूड हिस्ट्री venture called Zaiqa Nama in Delhi. So at Zaiqa Nama, one gets to sample the food that we talk about. So if this is something that interests you, so then you can follow us on our Instagram page. So one of the reasons why I started Zaiqa Nama and why I am doing Zaiqa Chronicles now is क्योंकि मैं चाहती थी कि हिस्ट्री के डिसिप्लिन से और भी ज़्यादा लोग जुड़ें। उन्हें ये लगे कि ये उनके लिव्ड एक्सपीरियंसेस के बारे में है, ये उनकी कहानी है, उनके बारे में है। सिर्फ डेट्स और पर्सनालिटीज़ के नाम रटना और एग्जाम्स में लिखना और ज़िंदगी में दोबारा कभी काम ना आने वाली वैसी कोई चीज़ नहीं है। और या फिर अंग्रेज़ी आने के बावजूद बहुत ही भारी भरकम जार्गन से और बहुत ही कॉम्प्लिकेटेड सेंटेंसेस से जुड़ना। तो मुझे लगा कि फूड हिस्ट्री इज़ इट्स अ वेरी कन्वीनियंट लिंक, जिससे मुझे लगा ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा लोगों तक मैं पहुंच सकती हूँ, उनसे अपनी बातें पहुंचा सकती हूँ और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा लोग हमसे जुड़ सकते हैं। तो फूड हिस्ट्री की खास बात ये है कि हमारी जो रोज़मर्रा की ज़िंदगी है, जिसकी एक बड़ी ही मंडेन एक्टिविटी होती है, रोज़ खाना बनाना और रोज़ खाना खाना। क्या खाने में बनेगा वो उससे भी ज़्यादा बोरिंग होता है डिसाइड करना। बट इन सब चीज़ों के बावजूद इस मंडेन एक्टिविटी में बहुत सारी दिलचस्प किस्से और कहानियाँ जुड़े हुए हैं। हमारी किचन की पैंट्री में जो सामान है, हम जिन बर्तनों में खाना बनाते हैं, हम जो खाना बनाते हैं, जिस तरीके से खाना बनाते हैं, वो सारी चीज़ें हमें तारीख से जोड़ती हैं। और जहाँ हम पैदा हुए हैं और जहाँ रहते हैं, सिर्फ वहाँ की तारीख से नहीं, बल्कि दुनिया के कई कोनों की तारीख और उनकी हिस्ट्री से हमें जोड़ती हैं, उनके कल्चर से हम जुड़े हुए हैं। चाहे हम इस बात को मानना चाहें या ना मानना चाहें, या अगर हमें नहीं पता है तो शायद हमें इसके बारे में जानना चाहिए, इसके बारे में बात करनी चाहिए। और वी आर सो कनेक्टेड विथ ईच अदर एंड वीव ऑलवेज बीन। मतलब आजकल की बात नहीं है कि हम और आप प्लेन की टिकट लेके प्लेन में बैठ के कहीं भी पहुंच जाते हैं। अगर हम तारीख खोल के पढ़ेंगे, देखेंगे हमेशा से जुड़े रहे हैं। There have always been civilizational exchanges, cultural exchanges have always been there, and cuisine जो है वो constantly evolve करती रही है, होती रही है, आज भी हो रही है और आगे चल के भी होती रहेगी। But इन सब के बावजूद हम all of us we hold on to an idea of authenticity कि एक फला खाना, एक पर्टिकुलर डिश वैसे ही बनती है या वैसे ही बननी चाहिए। तो मुझे ये आइडिया बड़ा ही इंटरेस्टिंग लगता है कि चले इसके बारे में हम और बात करेंगे। सो लेट मी इंट्रोड्यूस आवर गेस्ट फॉर टुडेज एपिसोड। संजिनी, कैन यू कम ऑन द स्क्रीन?
Hello.
How are you? And Sanjini is joining us from California. Thank you so much. वहाँ पे 6:30 बजे हुए हैं। मैडम को बहुत जल्दी पड़ा है to be with us. So we are so happy to have you here, Sanjini. Thank you so much. और बादस्तूर एक बायो नोट पढ़ा जाता है, तो मैं वो करती हूँ। मैं एक बायो नोट पढ़ देती हूँ। I promise this is the only mundane part of this session. So Sanjini Chatterjee is a PhD student in the Department of Critical Dance Studies at University of California, Riverside. Inspired by her mother and grandfather, she was always interested in cooking and she always enjoyed feeding others. She began looking at the impact of British colonialism on Bengali food, which is her home region, a few years back. And very recently, she started a food page named Khadya Maryada, which is on Instagram, which chronicles late 19th and 20th century Bengali food through cookbooks authored by women. And her page looks at how an amalgamation of different colonial as well as domestic cultural practices have shaped cuisine of Bengal. So welcome once again, Sanjini.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's like really early in the morning, but I'm glad to be here on Zaiqa Chronicles with you. And how are you doing?
आई एम गुड। दिल्ली का वेदर बहुत ही अजीब हो चुका है, जैसे कि हम कुछ देर पहले बात कर रहे थे। खैर चलिए, तो संजनी आप बंगाल से हैं and
Huh.
when we were talking earlier you said that your grandfather was a major influence, which is something I've not heard a lot. So can you just tell us a little bit about that, because that's a
Yes,
wonderful.
so I have always been fascinated by my grandfather, and
Right.
this is my paternal grandfather, and we have always shared a very interesting relationship. Like you know how in our vernacular languages, like to the elders, we address them as aap ya tum. But the relationship that I have with him, I address him as tu or tui in Bengali, like the way you address friends.
Mm-hmm.
And he has always been um, like extremely great in the kitchen, like his mutton curry, the way like he cooks other things, maybe like a cabbage thing that he does. It has always been extremely good. My mother keeps telling me that my grandfather also influenced her to cook and, like, in a way, taught her how to cook. And as a
Right.
child, I remember watching these numerous cooking shows with my grandfather. And even now, when we talk almost every day on the phone, and most of the days he will be like, this is what I saw on this channel, and this is the recipe. But I don't know how much correct this is. Here is my input on this. So, which is why he has, and like whenever I go home together, we cook together. He's very eager to try new things that I make. So, yeah, that is how he has been a great
That's
influence.
so. You are from Kolkata, right?
Yes,
And your primary interest right now, what I understand through your page, which I follow and really love, is 19th and 20th century cookbooks. So
yes,
let's straight away dive into the idea of authenticity, right?
sure.
I mean, what is your what is your idea of authenticity in food or cuisine?
So, when, like, before I started looking at these cookbooks, I was very taken up with the idea of authentic Bengali food, because like, or just like normal any food, like when I was in Calcutta living there, we would have the Bashanti pulao, which is the yellow pulao, and the mutton curry as termed as authentic Bengali food. It was there in most restaurants and eateries. When I moved to London, the authentic food shifted from Bengali to becoming the chicken tikka masala or the fish and chips.
Right.
And that like also like it really interested me, especially the part where chicken tikka masala is sort of the national food of England. And then I started going back to these cookbooks, which told me, and also another this book by Professor Utsha Ray, who is a professor at the Department of History in Jadavpur University. Her book titled Culinary Cultures, it showed me how the idea of authentic food is very flawed in certain ways, because whatever we eat, not just the recipes that we are eating, but the ingredients used in it, the things that they are cooked in, it is all an hybrid of different cultures.
Right.
Like potato, for example, is one of the most popular food in Bengal. Bengalis cannot imagine their lives without potatoes.
Right.
But potatoes were brought by the Portuguese to us. So it is not, we say that the Bashanti Pulao is sort of the most authentic Bengali food, but it also was an influence from the Mughals.
Right.
That that has come in. So at times we in our quest for authenticity, कि मुझे यही चाहिए, यही है authentic whatever food. We forget to at times see at the cultural links that are there in our society, like in our very homes.
Right, right. So, the issue with authenticity is it refuses to acknowledge that two cultures are amalgamating. The history has seen mass migration from one culture into another and progress of in cuisine or a creation of new one. It has such exciting results, but, the whole idea of authentic is like, you trying to deny this particular amalgamation to an extent. That is one of the problems, right?
It is because that is what I said. Ki we are just like shouting and striving to identify what is authentic and what shall be consumed, what shall be termed as authentic, and in that process we forget that. Our entire history, like India as a country, if we look at, we have had influences for so many different regions and so many different cultures since time immemorial. Right, and all of that has had an effect on the food that we eat in our very homes today.
Right, right. Before we continue further into this conversation, जो लोग हमें देख रहे हैं, सुन रहे हैं, please आप comment करें, हमसे बात करें. We would like to interact with you while this session is going on. Take your questions, and only then this conversation is going to be really interesting. Otherwise, it's going to be just two people talking to each other. We might as well would have done this over the phone. So this is that you interact with us. So please, please talk to us. Please comment. Right. So you were talking about the Basanti pulao. So let me tell my viewers who are not familiar with this particular pulao. एक पर्टिकुलर चावल आता है बंगाल में जिसको गोविंद भोग कहते हैं, विच इज सपोज टू बी वेरी फ्रेग्रेंट राइस. उसका पुलाव बनता है खड़े मसाले के साथ और उसमें एक अच्छा खासा हल्दी डाला जाता है जिससे बहुत ही सुंदर गोल्डन एक येलो कलर उसमें आ जाता है. तो वो बसंत का जो रंग जो है, वो जो येलो कलर जो रंग है, उस रंग से उसका नाम पड़ा है. एंड दिस इज वन ऑफ दी अगर बंगाली थाली की बात की जाए और किसी रेस्टोरेंट में जाके एक होमोजेनाइज्ड आइडिया ऑफ कुजीन है, उसमें बासंती पुलाव पाया जाएगा. उसके अलावा आपको एक है कोशा मांगशो, जिसमें जो मटन है उसको बहुत ही ज्यादा भून के बनाया जाता है, जिसमें प्याज और बाकी चीजें पड़ती हैं. और आजकल मतलब मैं भी काफी टाइम बंगाल में रही हूँ, तो इट इज समथिंग विच इज कुक्ड एवरी संडे एंड पीपल लव इट. इट्स अ होल सेरेमनी कि सुबह जाके बाजार किया जाएगा, मटन लाया जाएगा, फिर उसको बनाया जाएगा फुर्सत से, सुबह से बनना शुरू हो जाएगा और दोपहर को फिर पूरा परिवार बैठ के खाता है. राइट. Right, so you must have come across this reference where onions and garlic would also not be used in cuisine.
Yes, and in my family till today, the mutton does not have any onions in it. The Sunday, the kosher mangsho, it is made strictly without onions, and so like this again, the way my mother cooks it, it is inspired from both my maternal grandmother and my grandfather. Okay, so what my mother says is that you should not use too many spices in your mutton curry, because like it should be you, not the spices, who is doing the work. And my grandfather tells that the more you fry the mutton in the dry spices, the better color it gets and whatever. But this concept of not using onions and garlic in the mutton has been there in Bengal throughout. We have these books written around the 14th to the 16th century, which are called the Mangal Kavyas, which sort of document the cultural life of Bengal through various stories. And cooking or different kinds of recipes are an integral part of the Mangal Kavyas. And there, whenever you see the recipes of mutton, it is without onion and garlic. Mutton is also very much a bhog in the Durga Puja that we have. And the Durga Puja mutton is also made without onions and garlic.
Right. So Bengali cuisine has this very interesting concept called Amish and Niramish, loosely vegetarian and non-vegetarian. And बहुत fascinating चीज़ है कि अगर मटन को आप बिना प्याज के बनाएंगे तो उसको वेजिटेरियन माना जाएगा और देवी के भोग लगाने लायक माना जाएगा. इनफैक्ट कलकत्ता के बहुत सारे एरियाज में, स्पेशली काली घाट में, एक काली का छोटा सा मंदिर होता है बुचर शॉप के सामने, और वो मीट को एक भगवान का प्रसाद मान के लोग ले जाते हैं, बिकॉज देयर वाज दिस होल आइडिया कि and Bengal probably would be one of, there are many regions, but one of the regions where the high caste Hindus have non-veg, and fish is such a integral part of it. But the cooking has evolved so much over a period of time. Onions, which was associated with the lower castes and outsiders, namely the Muslims, it's become such a major part of it. You know, I think most of the dishes, except for few ceremonial and certain dals, not be cooked with. I understand moong dal ko kabhi bhi pyaz ke saath nahi banaya
moong dal ko kabhi bhi pyaz ke saath, but interestingly, see, now I keep on saying that, or like previous books have said that प्याज should not be used, or especially like इसे मूंग दाल में कभी नहीं इस्तेमाल होता है. पर when Proka Sundari is writing, her khichris with moong dal that she makes, it's always garnished with caramelized onions.
Right.
So it has, like, it is maybe it's a new addition, maybe she's trying, you know, to incorporate pyaz. She also tells us that if you cook in the ghee in which onions have been fried, that just brings an excellent taste and uplifts the taste of your food.
That's how it is there in Mughlai food. It does bring out that additional flavor. So, you know, though we constantly talk about amalgamation and cultural we all have an idea of what is authentic. हमारे घर का जो खाना है वो बहुत ही ऑथेंटिक है, और एक पर्टिकुलर रेस्टोरेंट जो हमें पसंद है, जहाँ पे हमने सबसे पहले टेस्ट किया होगा या जिसे हम पसंद करते हैं. So there is this connection between taste and memory that we hold on to as an idea of authenticity, and that carries on, because, you know, if you talk about different regions and different dishes, they evoke a certain idea of geographical boundary, right? अगर आप छोले भटूरे कहेंगे तो आप दिल्ली के बारे में भी बात कर रहे होंगे, शायद अमृतसर के बारे में बात कर रहे होंगे. अगर आप लूची के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं तो इट हैज टू बी कोलकाता. अगर आप बिरयानी के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं, डिपेंड्स व्हिच वर्जन यू आर. सो वी आइडेंटिफाई सर्टेन, बट यू नो, आई हैव ऑलवेज फाउंड इट फैसिनेटिंग कि वो when does it, you know, how do people claim a certain dish or a certain cuisine as their own? It's very fascinating where they completely erase how it's come from. You know, आप प्याज की बात कर लें, या फिर आप आलू की बात कर लें, मिर्ची की बात कर लें, टमाटर की बात कर लें. मैदा जो हम इस्तेमाल करने लगे वो 19वीं 20वीं शताब्दी में ही इतने बड़े पैमाने में इंडिया में आया है, उससे पहले नहीं हुआ करता था, right? Luchis would have been possible, but yet it's very much Bengali, you know, that is, you know, you can't.
It is very much Bengali. एक और चीज है जिसको पोस्तो कहते हैं, खसखस जो है. तो people on this side of the border, like the West Bengal people, we cannot imagine our lives without posto. But the history of how posto became is extremely cruel. वो एकदम it started with the tea business. It came like England was fighting a war with China, and then the opium trade started, and opium was sort of used by the English to sort of win over the tea market. And but we have completely forgotten that, and nowadays we cannot imagine our lives without posto. In Bengal, and similarly, जैसे आजकल कितने घर ऐसे हैं कि जहाँ टमाटर के बिना खाना बन सकता है, पर टमाटर only came back, like टमाटर became a very huge thing only in the late 19th century.
Right. Only with the coming in of the Britishers, it became what it became. Hi Farhana, so nice to see you join us again. Yeah, so we were talking about you know, पुराने जैसे कि मैं दिल्ली में हूँ, और पुराने पुराने जो हकीम हुआ करते थे, स्पेशली जो आज जिसे हम पुरानी दिल्ली के नाम से जानते हैं, पहले तो शाहजहानाबाद ही था, नई दिल्ली तो अब बनी है, बट जो पुराने जो हकीम वगैरह हुआ करते थे, वो दे यूज्ड टू नॉट रेकमेंड the onions and the thing, because they were very fit. It was a new produce, and they were not very happy about using it in their cuisine. And also a lot of these innovations, we don't give it, but I don't know if there have been papers written on it and people are talking enough about it, but a lot of these innovations have been done by people of lower class and lower caste and women. They are the ones who started using things which nobody wanted into their food, and over a period of time it's evolved into something very tasty and palatable, and everybody wants it, and at some point it's incorporated into the houses of the elite. Like the posto that you're talking about, after taking out the opium, it was the refuge which nobody wanted.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Farmers would be so poor that they would not know what else to eat, and there was nothing much for them they could do, so they started, the wives started using it and it's now a cultural identity.
It's now cultural identity is used in like chaps, which is again like a very like slow cooked piece of mutton or beef, and yeah, like these like little things, like just on the case of onions and garlic, there was a time when people who would consume onions or garlic would be sent out of the kingdom to live on the outskirts of the kingdom. And they were sort of used as a way to establish casteism, who is higher class, who is lower class, and why, like, and basically they were connected to sort of they were assumed to be the food of the so-called lower caste and lower class people. But again, like we see women in cooking in their houses, they are bringing in all of these. Also, in Bengal, we have this thing called a talk. Talk basically means acidic, okay? But it's not just our chutneys which are acidic, but we have dishes like, say, a fish dish made of like really small fishes, which becomes an ombol or a tok. And these things were again eaten primarily by the woman. After the men had sort of finished eating and there was not much left. Also, the acidic food would, could be kept preserved for a long time because of its acidity.
Right.
And again, something like what my grandfather says is that when in the Second World War, and especially during the famine, when food shortage was glaring on the face of Bengal, the talk, which was eaten primarily by these women, started coming into the main cuisine because nothing else was available for days and they had to depend on what was there at home.
Right. And there's so many of these foods, there's so many of rules and regulation what women can or cannot eat.
Yeah.
It's not about, so I don't know how many of our viewers know in Bengal, earlier women, maybe some families practice it even now. Once you lose your husband, you're not supposed to have onion, garlic, and you're not supposed to have non-vegetarian food.
And masoor dal.
And masoor dal.
Masoor dal.
Yeah, and one of the, and so it is the women of Bengal, widows of Bengal, who have contributed immensely to the cuisine of Bengal. The vegetarian fare that you see, and they're so nuanced, and there's so many varieties of it, really. So it's all actually been done by women who had to find a way to incorporate protein into their diet and come up with different ways to. I mean, good food is ultimately everybody. It's something that drives everyone, right? Farhana, you asked us a question, but I kind of have missed it. So can you send it again? Or Afan, can you help us look at that question
again?
Here
is it.
Yeah. Right. So she's asking, are ethnic foods held to a higher standard of authenticity? For example, chicken tikka masala in England, or Bengali dish in Kashmir, or a Kashmiri dish in Bangalore. So the whole idea of ethnicity and a cuisine and people wanting to try that out.
Yes, definitely. I think, like, see, in my mind, even like how much do I, go on arguing about authenticity? The way my mind has been fed for all of these years, I have a very specific version of what is Kashmiri food. Like I will always associate Rogan Josh with being Kashmiri. I will always associate Kawa with being Kashmiri. But what am I losing? I don't know, because I have not studied Kashmiri food in depth. I don't know. And I'm sure there is like a zillion of other things that is prepared in the home kitchen of Kashmiris that we don't know about. And
Right.
similarly, like the other, like I said, Bengali food, it's restricted now to being Bashundi Pulao and Kosha Mangsho, or like we only associate Lucknow with galauti kebab. What are the other things that are made at the home of a person living in Lucknow?
Right.
We
And
don't have
also
much
the
idea.
whole idea about a certain people coming from certain region or ethnicity cooking a certain kind of food. I don't know
Exactly.
how many of us, and it's a problematic idea whether we want to own up to it or not. But not many of us want to go to a Kashmiri food restaurant cooked by a Bihari chef.
Yeah,
And at the end of the day, everything is a skill. Everything can be learned, but this whole idea of that, it's going to be authentic only when certain people of certain racial ethnic background are cooking it. We all hold
exactly.
on to it, right? So let me kind of segue into this conversation where our ideas about cuisine are to a great extent homogenization of cuisine. जब हम बंगाली खाने के बारे में बात करते हैं तो हमारे जहन में कुछ तस्वीर बनती है कुछ डिशेस की, और जब हम गुजराती खाने के बारे में कहते हैं तो हम ढोकला के बारे में सोचते हैं। तो ये जो एसोसिएशंस हैं, दे वर बिल्ट मेजरली ड्यूरिंग द 19th एंड द 20th सेंचुरी बिकॉज ऑफ द कुक बुक्स दैट स्टार्टेड गेटिंग प्रिंटेड एट दैट टाइम। तो जैसे जैसे नए शहर बसने शुरू हुए, ज्यादा अर्बन स्पेस बढ़ने शुरू हुए, लोग गांव से शहर में आए, प्रिंटिंग प्रेस आ गई, प्रिंट कल्चर एक आ गया, तो ये औरतों के एजुकेशन के ऊपर बहुत ज्यादा जोर दिया जाने लगा। देयर वर मोर स्कूल्स, मोर कॉलेजेस, women started going, and then books started being printed for them. I mean, it's a different conversation what men wanted women to read and not read. That's a different conversation altogether. But cooking and food and household management was such a big part of it.
Yeah.
And the whole idea, somebody from Maharashtra exchanges recipes with her neighbors who's a Bengali. So there are certain dishes, there are certain recipes that got earmarked as this is what Bengali food is. And I think that has really kind of shaped how we think about a cuisine, right?
Yes, Ali, definitely, definitely. That has shaped, and like in the 19th and 20th century, there was this entire class emerging, the middle class,
Right.
right? And they tried to have a distinct identity of themselves through their cuisine, through the music they listened, the dances they did. Oh, sorry, they did not dance, but like other. All of these came together to form this identity of what the middle class is, and food was very much a part of it. Like they could not eat what the high class Indians, like the upper class Indians or the English or the colonizers were eating. They did not want to eat what the lower class or sort of the lower caste people so-called were eating. So they had to come up in a midway with something. And I think that is when, and also I think cookbooks of different regions tell us different stories. Like cookbooks printed in Calcutta have a different way of looking at food and a different and sort of charts different food in comparison to cookbooks which were published, say, in North Bengal at that particular time or in Assam at that particular time. So again, like all of this, like formation of cities, formation of that particular people living in those particular cities, everything sort of came in. Everything affected the production of these cookbooks, and also basically what was being cooked at home uh, during this time.
Right. Before we go into the domestic space and kitchen, I want to quickly talk about this creation of this whole new cuisine, or rather, the middle class was constructing itself or finding itself through food. जैसे कि अभी शिंजिनी वाज सेइंग कि लोअर कास्ट है, उनके भी खाने नहीं खाने बिकॉज कास्ट रूल्स को फॉलो करना है. The upper caste are also eating foods that the high caste, middle class doesn't want to eat and incorporate. But at the same time, a lot of things were incorporated. नई नई चीजों का इजाद हुआ है, जैसे कि चॉप जो है यूरोप में बेसिकली एक मीट का पीस होता है जिसको ब्रेड में या अंडे में लपेट के उसको फ्राई किया जाता है. और बंगाल में जो चॉप है उसमें आलू होता है, बहुत सारी सब्जियां होती हैं, श्रेड्स ऑफ मीट अगर आप मीट खा रहे हो, और फिर उसको ब्रेड करके फ्राई किया जाता है. इट्स अ चीपर ऑल्टरनेटिव आल्सो इन अ वे.
उसको बेसन में फ्राई किया जाता है. बंगाल की जो जो चॉप है, जो ऐसे हर चाय की दुकान के साथ मिलता है, या इट्स वेरी अगेन वेरी इन बंगाल. तो उसको बेसन में फ्राई किया जाता है. और बेसन आई अज्यूम वाज अ चीपर वर्जन देन ब्रेड एट दैट पर्टिकुलर टाइम. पर कुछ और ऐसे भी चीजें हैं कि जब ब्रेड ना मिले, जैसे फिश फ्राइज हो गई, उनको आइदर ब्रेड क्रम्स में डुबो के फ्राई किया जाता है, या कभी कभी बिस्किट्स के क्रम्स भी उसमें लेयर किए जाते हैं टू गेट दैट क्रिस्पीनेस. एंड इट्स वेरी अगेन सिमिलर टू द फिश एंड चिप्स ऑफ इंग्लैंड.
राइट राइट. तो मतलब जो खाने आपको आसपास दिख रहे हैं, एंड फूड वाज आल्सो उसको अपना बनाने की कोशिश, राइट.
हाँ, उसको एकदम
साइड जहाँ पे वेयर कॉलोनियल आइडियोलॉजी वाज सो प्रोमिनेंटली डिस्प्लेड कि हम जो खाना खाते हैं और जिस तरह से खाना खाते हैं उसकी वजह से हम वैसे हैं जैसे हम हैं, हम आप पे डील कर सकें. एंड देयर वाज दिस एंटायर डिस्कोर्स जहाँ पे बंगाल को खासकर बहुत ही ज्यादा जलील किया जाता था इस बात पे कि आप चावल खाने वाले लोग हैं, आप उतने ज्यादा मैस्कुलिन नहीं है जितने ज्यादा वीट ईटिंग एरियाज से लोग हैं. जो वो रेशियल जो थ्योरी है कॉलोनियलिज्म की कि कुछ रेसिस मार्शल है कुछ नहीं है, आप that whole thing. So there was this whole attempt in Bengal to incorporate wheat also in the diet.
There was this entire attempt to incorporate wheat, and it has been quite successful. Like most Bengali will see कि रात को आप क्या खाते हो, रात को हम रोटी खाते हैं. But like there are Bengalis like me who cannot eat roti, however much we try. Like my whole life is based on rice. But even like again, जब हम ये कुक बुक्स को देखेंगे तो देखेंगे कि बहुत सारी रेसिपियां हैं सिर्फ राइस के ऊपर, पर रोटी को उन्होंने इनकॉर्पोरेट नहीं किया है कुक बुक्स में. पर क्या हम ये कह सकते हैं कि रोटी ऑथेंटिक नहीं है बंगाल की, या बंगाली डिश नहीं है? नहीं. बंगाल हैज और लाइक बंगाल हैज सॉर्ट ऑफ क्रिएटेड देयर क्विजीन अराउंड रोटी टू. हमारे यहाँ कुछ सब्जियां ऐसी है जो सिर्फ रोटी के लिए बनती है, कुछ सब्जियां ऐसी है जो सिर्फ चावल के साथ खाई जाती है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल जैसे एक बहुत ही सिंपल है जिसको हम चौचोरी कहते हैं, राइट. जहाँ पे सब्जियों से बनता है, ठीक है. एंड आलू का चौचड़ी हो गया, कभी कभी गोभी का हो गया, और चौचड़ी ज्यादातर रोटी या लूची के साथ ही खाया जाता है. चौचड़ी कभी कभी आप चावल के साथ भी लोगे, but you will have to have like a dal or something else with it as well.
Hi, Purnima. Hi, Ananya. Thank you for joining us. Ananya was just saying that, the Bengali Muslims and Bengali Christians, they never use besan and they've always used breadcrumbs, right?
See, this is what...
With, I mean, it's family to family, I'm sure. I mean, region to region. But
yes.
Maybe breadcrumbs wala hi khaya. That's what I know, somebody...
Like, what I was hinting at was that, we get these aloo chops at these roadside stalls. We get something which we call beguni, where a slice of brinjal is dipped into besan and then fried. We also have the onion fritters, which are the piyaji, and all of these together are called chops. Okay. And which are had with in the evening either with our tea, or we just like with moody, puffed rice and these chop. And then there are also, like as Professor Kabir was saying, the Bengali Muslims and the Bengali Christians, they always use breaded things in their chops, whether it was their lamb chops, whether it was their croquettes, which this is something that I've come to know from Professor Kabir's one of her posts, that croquettes was a very much thing to give children of at schools.
Mm.
So, and yeah, like, but nowadays, you probably at some schools you cannot take your croquettes because vegetarianism is so much of a thing right now, and
Right.
you there are schools which will tell you that you cannot carry meat because it will smell a certain way, it will do certain things, so you have to bring certain things which are only vegetarian. So this is also a way how erasure of our culture is happening, and
Right.
like we are being told what we can eat in a certain place and what we cannot eat in a certain place.
Right. Right. In the 19th and 20th century Bengal, we also have, food being used as a medium to do away with religious orthodoxy. So, the young Bengal activists, I don't know whether we should call them activists, but students who were associated with that movement, people who were joining Brahmo Samaj, they would actually partake in consuming bread and biscuit, which was forbidden in their houses.
Yes.
They were basically made by Muslim artisans in these small indigenous factories, और बहुत बहुत गुस्सा किया जाता था, बहुत मना किया जाता घरों में. और इसके बावजूद, this was a sign, this was a piece of modernity and progress and rationalism that they were consuming. It
Yes.
became a symbol of that.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then I think I hope I'm right, but it was Young Bengal who also started, not just started consuming beef, but there were also episodes when they would like throw beef meat in the temples. And just as a way to show that if we are eating meat of a certain animal, that doesn't make us like that doesn't make us bad, or that doesn't make us impure or something else, because beef has also been mentioned as a delicacy in the Vedas, right? So if you have to go that way and say that this is Hindu and this is some other, this is Muslim and this is Christian, and I don't want to associate myself with any of that, you are wrong,
Right.
because it was consumed by your ancestors.
Of course it was. Yeah. Right.
So
Right. Yeah, and
um,
that was also an attempt by a lot of not even young, like the whole idea of Reformation was also, so much rooted in food, in the sense that the whole idea that your colonial masters are the way
mhm,
they are, the way they eat their food and run their homes, and their women are a certain kind, with certain precision they run their
yes,
home. A lot of that was, there was an attempt to imitate a lot of that,
that was like, it's very clear, in the late 18th or early 19th century came up this book written by Isabella Beaton, the book of the household management, and it was completely like this compendium of home science, where she had written not just recipes, but what what food to consume at what time of the day, or like what utensils to have, how should the kitchen be, what kind of servants you should appoint in the kitchen, what kind of food you should give to people who are sick, and specifically, like say if someone has a fever, you have to give this specific kind of a potion like made with ginger or something. If someone is having a diarrhea, then another specific kind of food, something. So
right.
it was an entire compendium. And the cookbook that I'm working on, which is written by the great Progya Sundari Devi, and it's in 3 volumes. Her cookbook
Can you give us
sort
a
of.
little background to who she is so that our viewers understand who we are talking
Yes,
about?
so Pragya Sundari Devi, or Progya Sundari Devi, she was the niece of Rabindranath Tagore, and she was sort of she used to edit this journal, this magazine, which was read widely by women. It was called Punno. She was the editor over here, and it was just like a household magazine that would benefit women. And here she would not just have recipes of different food, but also like different women would write say essays or stories or poems. Also things like she would tell that this is the price, like in this week the price of potatoes are this, or things like that.
Right.
And then most of the recipes that she wrote in the Purna magazine, she then collected all of that and then published that under her first book, that is Amish or Niramish Ahar, Volume 1, which chronicles only vegetarian food. And it has about 400 recipes of vegetarian food. And it came out in the 1900s, followed by her second book, which was Amish and Niramish Volume 2, that came out in 1906, which chronicles non-vegetarian recipes. And most of these recipes, though they've come out in early 20th century, they were already being cooked in the late 19th century because they were being getting published in Punno. And Prokashundari Devi is also thought to be she had great inputs in the invention of the Ickmic cooker, which later on again led to the pressure cooker.
Right.
Yeah, that is who she is. And she also wrote a book called Rondhon Bora, which is an Assamese cookbook, because she was married in Assam, and she went and then again wrote this cookbook. It's also said that she traveled along with her husband to various places, which is also why her cookbook has a number of different recipes from different regions of India.
Right.
And they are also like in a way made to suit the Bengali kitchen. So again, like we see how we sort of make different cuisines from different part of India our own,
Right.
in certain ways.
One of our viewers, Barkha. Hi, Barkha. Thank you for joining us. She just pointed out that जो राजस्थान की जो गट्टे की सब्जी होती है, that has been incorporated into Bengali cuisine as beshune sabji, which is
okay.
Yeah. So, which she says is cooked in Bengali Rajput houses a lot. So she says it's a Rajputana dish which has been incorporated into the cuisine.
See, that is so fascinating. I did not know that. Thank you, Barkha.
Right. So what kind of recipes was she doing, and what kind of insight that gives us into the food culture of the time?
So, see, again, the thing that Prokashundari and people during that time, through their art, through their literary writings, they were all trying to create this new class. Another thing that they were also trying to do was they're trying to be anti-colonial. They were trying to go against this British culture and everything, trying to show that the Indian culture was better than the British culture in certain ways. And so what Prokashundari does is that when she's writing, she links her food back to the Vedic age in some ways. Okay, so like when she's cooking something on rice, she will sort of quote something in Sanskrit at the end, showing that this was present in our culture since time immemorial. And she will also, but interestingly, she rarely refers to sources other than Sanskrit ones, sort of like there was this urge to connect India back to this golden Vedic past where everything was beautiful and wonderful.
And women were doing so great in Vedic age, that this whole thing. Always, I check these answer sheets which are full of these, Vedic age and high status of women and all of that, which is such a
it is like I really respect and I'm in awe of her, but somehow this connecting back to the Vedic age, I cannot I don't, I know why she does that, but somehow I don't want the book to do that. She doesn't talk like when she's writing even recipes of, say, kebabs and other things, she doesn't for once mention the Mughal influence or the Turkish influences that we have had, the Persian influences that we have had. She just connects it back to this golden Vedic age.
Yeah,
You
because
know?
the history writing in the 19th, 20th century had also internalized the British way of looking at history. So the
Exactly.
there was the glorious Hindu age, and everything wrong that happened in during the medieval period, which was the Muslim age,
Which
right?
was a Muslim age, it was a dark age. And in her foreword to the non-vegetarian volume, she also says that I might, since I'm writing so much about non-vegetarian food, I might be seen as a person who imposes cruelty on
Mhm.
others. And she strictly, like, not just strictly, she sort of maintains this way, saying that she just connects non-vegetarian food to European cuisine,
Mhm.
and to, in a way, to Mughlai cuisine. She doesn't refer to kebabs or any of those as Mughlai cuisine. She just mentions things like, we should strive to be vegetarian in a certain way, but we cannot ignore the non-vegetarian aspect of food. And even the recipes when the book was first published, the non-vegetarian recipes were limited to curries. By then had not, like, curries were just evolving at that time, and we can see that from the way she uses curry powder. There is a lot of use of curry powder, which again in today's time we don't use something called a curry powder,
Right.
right? But she was using a lot of curry powder in her dishes, so she did not categorize curry as an Indian recipe in that way. So curries was a separate chapter. And then she had all of these kebabs, all of these different sort of interestingly, there was no mention of biryani in her food. There was a lot of pulao, because again, pulao she connected back to the Vedic age.
Mhm.
um, Giving examples of how pulao has been talked about, what are the health benefits of eating a pulao, but she doesn't have a biryani uh, in her.
Can you think of a Durga Puja celebration without a trip to a biryani place?
It is incomplete. Okay, it cannot, like, we cannot think our lives without biryani. Since I have frequented Nizams and Arsalan mostly every day back from school, I cannot imagine my life without the Arsalan mutton roll, or the mutton biryani. It's not possible. But she just eliminates all of this influence in her book, which
Right.
is really shocking.
So
Um,
Shrestha, she commented earlier how food, how it separates one community from the other, but it also is building bridges. There is this
yes.
dilemma which is there, and
That is
uh,
my little sister, so hello to her.
hi, Acha Shrestha, that's your little sister. All right, and
Shrita.
Shrita, okay, right.
Yes.
Um, and Farhana just mentioned that you're talking about Pragya Sundari, how it's a very ethnocentric way of writing something where you're doing away. It is. And we need to recognize it and talk about it also. I mean,
Yes.
that's an attempt to, this is what an attempt, this is exactly what you're doing. I'm sorry, I'm just getting
No,
the
no,
two.
and when this her second volume of non-vegetarian food, when it was republished with a foreword by Ira Ghosh, and it was published in the 1990s, then we see this entire chapter on Bengali non-vegetarian food. Okay, and these were all written by Progha Sundari, just that they were not published at first. And it is then, like, only in the 90s, we get recipes from her, such as, macher matha diye muger dal, that is moong dal with fish head, or
Mhm.
fish head and fish cabbage with fish head, and like different other recipes like this. But in the first edition, all of these were not there, because she was trying to, and like, establish that how non-vegetarian food is something foreign
Right.
to us. Even though she was sort of, creolizing it in a way. She was making it suit the Bengali kitchen. she was strictly thinking of them as foreign in some ways or the other.
So since we're talking about cookbooks that is written by a woman for women, the kind of food that has to be cooked in domestic kitchen, let's talk about a little bit about, how the domestic space transforms cuisine and what an important role it plays. And we don't talk about it often enough. We are usually, yeah, we take our mother cooking for granted, like we love it, but we take it for granted. But historically speaking, it's played such an important role, right?
It is so important. Like Prokar Sundari is writing all of these. She's also introducing, like she's documenting the words that are used in Bengali kitchen. So like if you see French food or English food or like specifically French food, because it is sort of held as a higher standard, and you will see that there are these terms. That are used in while they are cooking. There is a particular way, like chopping onions and slicing onions are different, right? And that is like a very basic thing that I'm telling. And but in Bengal, prior to this, like these words that are used to describe a certain thing that you're doing while cooking, like say bhuna, right? Bhuna is a specific word, and I don't know how to translate bhuna. I don't think frying is an appropriate translation of bhuna. Or there is another word called baghar. Baghar is different from tempering, even though we might translate it as tempering, because baghar was specifically used when certain whole spices, a garam masala, were put in ghee. Okay.
Right.
We also have just other things like these onomatopoeic words like put or togbog, which are used. Togbog is used by her to say how much the water should boil. So like we have a rolling boil in English, and we have recipes which say before you boil the pasta, the water should be in a rolling boil. So she used like, and these words like togbok or put or like numerous as these were used in everyday colloquial conversation in the kitchen.
Right.
And she's the one who does not only use this while she's writing down the recipes, but at the end of the book, she sort of has this glossary saying that what this actually means and how you can use it.
Right.
So we see that how this how the home kitchen, the domestic kitchen, I call it Heshel, and it is sort of building our vocabulary also in some ways. Vocabulary that is so intrinsic to a particular culture that it cannot be translated. And this is why I think talking about or being a part of the kitchen, listening to the people in the kitchen, listening to the kitchen is so important to actually understand what our culture tells us.
Also, simply the fact that, you might be trained, like, we all are trained in the way of cooking. Our mothers have been our first guides. So we know a certain kind of cooking because of our mothers.
Yes.
And then there is always changes, like when you get married, you move into a different family or you move out to study and you're learning new things and you're incorporating all of that. So, amalgamation and cultural exchanges begin at home.
Begin at home, very much so. Like
such an important role to it. And also the fact that since, going back to our conversation where we were talking about authenticity of food, that also takes away the spontaneity which is there in cooking. आपके पास जो है, जितना सामान है, जो किचन में पड़ा हुआ है, जो चीज खराब
किचन में पड़ा हुआ है, उसी से काम चलाएंगे. And that is something we don't do now. We are like, oh, I have this recipe, I have this list of ingredients, I need to go to the market before I even need this. And the cookbooks are proving it elsewise. These old cookbooks, like Proka Devi has a cheesecake recipe made out of chana and paneer.
Yeah. Right.
And like similarly, like even now when I follow her recipes or when I follow any recipes, I make do with things I have at home. I sometimes skip things. I don't have so much time to make it as elaborate a dish as she writes. And I know that people who follow my page similarly do not have like entire like 3-4 hours to spend in the kitchen.
That's
So,
okay.
and
That's
that is okay.
yeah, that is okay. I mean, um, it's according to our convenience. How much time you're
It
going to
is,
be able to put in
yeah,
your,
and
and the
that is
ingredients that
how,
are cheaply available at that. You will not go out and buy. So if you can't afford a mutton, probably you're
yeah,
going to try to figure something out with dals. You
yes,
try and
exactly.
buy buddies out of it, and then you try and create a dish. That's how always been. And I also find it very disturbing the fact that women are the one feeding everyone in the house world over, but in a lot of these countries, women are the ones who are most malnutrition. The fact
Definitely.
that they do all the cooking, they all do all the work, they feed others, but they're not feeding themselves. That's how
They're not
deeply.
feeding themselves. And see, women have become like these like sole caregiving agents, like,
Mhm.
but who are caring for these women? Like, they
Mhm.
have been caregivers through so many of the, not just the difficult situations in history, but like in documented history, but also in like everyday lives.
Right.
But in some ways or the other, they do not get back that same care
They don't.
from.
Into caring for others as opposed to caring for yourself, right?
Exactly,
And,
exactly.
yeah, but and the fact that a lot of innovations are happening in the kitchen in the way that there's so many time-saving techniques which are available, instruments which are available, and you do hear people talking about कि अरे वो सिलबट्टे पे जो पीस के जो मसाला बनता
हाँ,
था तो बड़ा अच्छा लगता था, तो आप खुद पीस लीजिए, आप खुद सीखिए।
आप खुद सीखिए, इंस्टेड ऑफ सेइंग दैट सील बट्टे का मसाला ही ना ऑथेंटिक है, मैं वही उससे ही खाऊंगी।
तो
तो
खुद बनाना सीखें. And also, all and women are the repository of tradition and culture in the sense, now Holi is going to come. So
या
everything which is going to be cooked at home or Eid or Diwali, it's the women who will learn recipes from their mothers and grandmothers. They'll be recreating those, and basically the whole idea giving that cultural feel to their children or to the family. And men just sit around and chill and they partake.
they will play their tambola in Diwali and forget about the kitchen.
Right. So I mean, only reason why I'm saying this, that if there is this whole idea of authenticity and the nostalgia and memory associated with food, I think then everybody needs to learn cooking. Then you need to learn how to cook from your own mother. Learn these recipes, not depend on your sister and your wife to carry these
Exactly.
recipes forward. If you like it so much, then you learn it, and that is the way we're going to be able to, save these culinary traditions and these recipes and all of that.
Exactly. And I think, like, not just cook, but also learn to clean the kitchen, please. Because after you have shown the world how proliferate as a cook you are, and you're a chef, someone, your mother or your wife, or like whoever, someone in the house is coming after you to clean the kitchen, that is not done. So
Yeah,
you
that
have to know how to chop your vegetables. You have to know where to keep back the masala after you have used it, and you have to know how to wipe the gas and clean the place after
exactly.
you've finished cooking.
Another session, we don't have much time, but we must have a conversation about how we associate certain food as घर का खाना and बाहर का
Yes,
खाना. जो घर पे हम
definitely.
बाहर की चीजें बनाने की कोशिश करते हैं वो कभी बनता नहीं है, और कई बार हम बाहर we try and look for that taste जो घर पे था. So we have such clear demarcation, and how women have also been excluded from a lot of these spaces which pay. Cooking has been domain of women, right? So
Cooking
I
has been a domain of, yes, and when just a last thing, when Prokashundari is writing, she's also sort of bringing in women into the kitchen, because in certain upper class families, women were restricted even from the kitchen.
right.
Okay. And they were like, no, only Brahmin cooks could cook. And women, since they would also menstruate, they were not allowed to enter the kitchen.
Right.
um, and but she is like sort of telling these that which is like both. It has its wrongs and it has its rights. She tells that since nowadays we are so dependent on servants, we have forgotten how to eat good things, which is why the women of the family should come back into the kitchen. Now, at that point, when women were barred from the kitchen, this was a good statement that yes, bring back the woman, let the women enter the kitchen freely. But also, if I look at it now, why should it only be women who are being called to enter the kitchen so that we can eat good food?
Exactly.
Right. So yeah, and we also see how things like change with age.
Yes, they have. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is the only, I mean, we have to end our session now. And thank you so much, all of you who've been watching us.
Yes.
Please follow this particular page, Rivers, for further updates. We would try and see you every week. And hopefully you would want to come and listen to us talk on different topics. So all of you have a great weekend and we'll see you super soon. Take care.